Hi, welcome to the podcast. Today we're going to look at the atheist burden of proof argument they always throw out. In other words, when you talk to an atheist, well, the first thing you're going to do is they'll tell the Christian, hey, I can't believe there's a God unless you prove it to me. And you have the burden of proof because you're the one making the allegation. And what we're going to talk about is what is this burden of proof that they're talking about? Well, probably the best way to explain this is if we look at a burden of proof in a criminal case. Now, in a criminal case, you've probably heard the state or the government has the burden of proof to prove the allegation against the defendant. And so, when we're talking about the burden of proof, whether God exists or God doesn't exist, what these atheists are telling us is, I don't have the burden of proof to show he doesn't exist. Rather, you, the one making the allegation that God does exist, has the burden of proof. So you with me there? So they don't when you approach an atheist and they're debating with you and they say, "Hey, I don't have to prove God doesn't exist. You have to prove God does exist." And so that's what we're talking about here. Now, one of the things to understand is burden of proof in a legal case, for example, can be very different. The one you're most familiar with is burden of proof labeled beyond a reasonable doubt. And that means that to find someone guilty, usually, we're going to have enough proof that it eliminates all reasonable doubts. And there's other standards out there, like preponderance of the evidence. And that's probably best explained as in a legal case. If you have to prove the preponderance of the evidence, such as in a civil case, what you're going to do is show it's more likely than not that this occurred. In other words, usually like 51% versus 49% more likely to have occurred. Now, the thing that the atheists don't understand is, and well, maybe they do understand, they're just trying to put their own belief system on you. But what you need to understand is no one in this argument has the right to decide who the burden of proof is on. And so when the atheist says you have the burden of proof, there isn't anything out there that actually says who the burden of proof is going to be on. Now, of course, in like a criminal case or civil case in court of law, the Constitution or maybe the legislators or maybe a judicial decision makes a decision who has to have this burden of proof. But when we're just talking about a religious debate, there's nothing out there anywhere that says who has a burden of proof. The atheists have just taken upon themselves to claim that those who are trying to convince others of their religious beliefs that they have the burden of proof. That's not true. So if you're in some debate with some atheists and they try to throw this burden of proof out on you, what you need to understand is they're just putting out their own belief. There's nothing that requires you to have burden of proof more than them. It's just their own personal belief. Don't get suckered into that. Atheists have just decided that this is the way it's going to be, and the truth is they just don't have the authority to do that. It's everybody sets their own burden of proof in a religious case, right? Um, so I hope this helped. Check out my YouTube channel for more videos. Maybe some of them might be of interest to you. Thank you.